Untitled on the beat.
What's good, everyone? It's Nati again with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMVSportsZone. And once again, we got you a great fantasy preview for week 16 of the football season. Likely the last fantasy football week for many fantasy owners out there. And we got an action-packed video for you guys. Noah, thanks again, bro, for joining. And do you want to plug your wonderful fantasy platform that everybody should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, thanks, Nati. So obviously, I'm here for SportAI, which is a mobile app platform integrated with artificial intelligence that helps you optimize your fantasy lineups, helps anyone understand sports analytics. So we've been coming on the past couple of weeks, bringing our breakout picks. We've had signups, so in the description below, you'll see the sign-up link for the beta. We're still collecting beta testing signups for our private beta. Weekly, we'll be sending out the breakout players of the week. We've already had tons of results. We've already had 90% of our beta testers make the playoffs, and proofs in the pudding. All three of my big money teams are in the final. So I'm with you here. Nervous for the final week. We'll see what happens, but yeah, thank you for having me on, Nati.
Can we just take a second to really grasp the fact that Noah is in 3 fantasy leagues and he's in 3 fantasy finals right now? Like that's amazing. Again, we talked about this off camera. That shows that, the proof is in the pudding when it comes to SportAI, and also like you just in general as a great fantasy player. So trust his advice and make sure to trust it once more in this championship week. Once again, likely for many people out there. So that being said, let's get started with this great fantasy preview video. First and foremost, can you give the good people out there fantasy recap of week 15? Can you give me a pick that you got right last week? Maybe multiple if you had a really good week, which is always likely, or fantasy picks that you got wrong. Give the people out there your take off of week 15.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest, we feasted last week. So let's start out with our biggest dub, JD McKissick of the Washington football team.
Yes, sir.
For the people that had him, he was actually on a lot of waivers. He's only owned in around 60% of leagues because a lot of people had fear that Antonio Gibson would come back, but the strategy is never to drop that player. You always want to keep him to be safe until the last possible second. I know that people are worried about waivers, but told you not to do that. And you just, lo and behold, McKissick went off, even against a good Seattle defense. If Antonio Gibson doesn't come back, JD McKissick's still a solid play. A lot tougher matchup this week, so at least last week was a huge dub. Another running back, Devin Singletary, we had as a breakout pick. If it wasn't for that play call that held him back, he would have had an even bigger day with that Statue of Liberty run. So Singletary is starting to have become the unquestioned number 1 with Zach Moss. Still doing well, but not being the same type of player Singletary is. Singletary finally has taken the RB1. Might be a little too late for some people, but whoever has Singletary still or is still in the playoffs or in the finals, check out your roster because Singletary is still a good pick for this week. And then our final dub, well, we can say our entire defensive pick because we picked the Buffalo Bills, Arizona Cardinals, and Cleveland Browns. All great picks last week. And frankly, the Cardinals are a good pick this week as well. Obviously not going to be on the top percentile for us based off our new week calculations, but still a solid play. And then our final dub, Mark Andrews, Baltimore Ravens. At a tight end position that's very weak this year, you want at least 12 plus points. That's what Mark Andrews gave you. So
definitely took a while.
He's also got the Jaguars this week. So if he's your tight end 1 and you made it this far, I'm not saying roll out the celebration parade yet, but you're in a good spot for tight end.
Yeah. It took a while for Mark Andrews to show up and get you tight end 1 numbers, but he's doing it now, and it won't matter for me, but I know it matters for a lot of people out there who have him on their probable championship teams. And the JD McKissick pick, that was a great pick. I ended up picking him up off of waivers in our league, but didn't end up starting him. Didn't really need to because I blew out the other team. But McKissick is really good, and Antonio Gibson is out another week. Kissick might be a running back 2 potentially. I'll get to that a little bit further in this video, but he's definitely going to be a great play this week once more. The fantasy pick that I got right for week 15. So I also had a pretty good week last week outside of the pick that I'll mention right after this and the Austin Eckler fantasy stud. Although I did add the caveat though, if he was healthy, make sure to start him. Didn't seem too healthy, even though he did end up playing. So, but I'll take an L there. But the one pick that I absolutely hit out of the ballpark, and we talked about this extensively off camera too, the Jalen Hurts fantasy breakout pick for last week. Wow. I hinted last week that Jalen Hurts is the real deal, the former Sooner, and more importantly, Alabama Roll Tide football quarterback, has the mobility and arm talent to be a legit dual threat quarterback in this league, which does suck though, as Washington football fans, right? Like we got to play him twice a year probably for the next couple of years. So that will suck, but Hurts gave fantasy owners nearly 38 fantasy points last week in a absolutely dazzling performance. I got to see a part of the game, and he was amazing. Really gave you sort of like Russell Wilson type vibes. I'm not saying he's going to be a Russell Wilson, but I'm just saying he's
very similar type player, yeah.
For sure. And he definitely has a hold on that Eagles quarterback one position for the near future. Sorry, Carson Wentz, probably his last days in Philly.
Colts need a quarterback. Colts need a quarterback.
Yeah, Colts do need a quarterback. So again, absolutely hit it out of the park with this pick. Fantasy pick that I absolutely got wrong last week. And I'm embarrassed to say that I called him a stud last week. It was Ben Roethlisberger. Yep, I did. I did predict him to be a fantasy stud against the Bengals defense, who I did predict him to be a stud largely because I believe it was like a month ago. He actually put up over nearly 300 yards and 4 touchdowns against the same Bengals defense. And he just has had a way of producing against very bad defenses, and I thought he would do once more last week. But wow, this time in a bad way. Big Ben just did not show up at all last week. We all saw it. To be fair, though, the entire Steelers offense sputtered, but Roethlisberger was especially awful. And Steelers are very much going in the wrong direction headed into the playoffs, right? We saw them play against the Washington football team, and I really think Washington broke them. Like, their offense is just not the same. It really isn't, and I would just stay away from the Steelers' offense outside of potentially Deontay Johnson, who's been producing even with the last couple of rough weeks, and Juju stopped dancing on teams' logos. That is really disrespectful and is bad luck, and just stop doing it, bro. Just stop doing it. But yeah, those are the 2 picks that I want to really get at in terms of my Week 15 recap.
Steelers do not have any chances to really have an easy matchup. They have the Colts and then another tough matchup next week. So I know it's tempting. Benny Snell's going to be on the waiver for sure. Do not pick up Benny Snell. He's a goal line back, not explosive, won't give you the yards per carries you need. Only person redeemable on this current roster. Eric Ebron, unfortunately, got hurt, but he's usually a safe play at tight end. Only redeemable player right now is Deontay Johnson, because you can't even trust.
He's healthy,
and he's healthy. Yeah, Deontay Johnson has that unique situation where he has guaranteed 10 to 13 targets a game, and even with the drop issues, which he's kind of put in this pass for last week, he has a great chance to do well this week as well. Because the Colts defense, everyone says tough, but has been exploitable. Even Watson had a big game last week with his terrible core. So the Steelers have a chance to bounce back offensively, but they have way too many questions. I would only trust Deontay Johnson when you are in the fantasy championship.
The problem is, though, we talked about this again off camera. Chris Carson, we often talk about how he has been made out of glass last couple of years and always gets injured. Deontay Johnson, if he keeps this up, might be another guy that is just made out of glass. He always seems to get injured. And hopefully he stays healthy because he's been producing when healthy. So, but yeah, probably I definitely agree there. Moving on a bit, can you give me one fantasy sleeper that will break out in Week 16?
Fantasy sleeper. So I really want to come on here today and break it down, because let's first, for the sleeper pick, talk about someone that's not necessarily on waivers. I think that's more of a breakout player. Sleeper pick is someone that's already on someone's roster that can elevate them to a championship, and that person is, they believe, David Johnson of the Houston Texans. So if you saw last week, frankly, I think Watson should have used him a lot earlier in the year. People forget he's an excellent pass catcher, and he's a consistent floor guy, but he really exploded. With all the other Duke Johnson and a lot of other options on the run game hurt, David Johnson was finally able to get the type of carries that he had on his Arizona days. And against a Bengals defense that's very weak against the run and the short game, David Johnson can elevate you to a championship. So that's our breakout pick, or that's our sleeper pick for this week.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I have him in my other league. I know you have him in our league, so hopefully he goes off this week and gives you guys some good production. My pick, again, someone who probably isn't on waivers in most leagues, might be, but is likely just on rosters and might be a good play. I would say Jarvis Landry, actually, the wide receiver for the Browns, as my first pick. I actually have two this week. Okay. And with Jarvis Landry, he's found new life as a legit, reliable wide receiver 2 option that continues to be fed the ball by a surging Baker Mayfield. And, this has happened really after Odell Beckham Jr. went down almost 2 months ago, actually now, with a torn ACL. And Landry's averaged nearly 16.5 half PPR points the last 4 weeks and hasn't even played against easy pass defenses in the Ravens and the Giants the last 2 weeks. So, this week he's playing against the Jets defense that I get it. Last week they did finally get their W. Did actually limit the Rams passing game a bit, but still ranked 7th on the season in terms of fantasy points given up to wide receivers. So I see Landry as being a solid wide receiver 2 option. Yet again, I don't see him as being, a bona fide wide receiver 1, but I see him as continuing to show you that he is a solid wide receiver 2 option in fantasy football. And my other pick, I talked about him earlier, but I had the caveat that if Antonio Gibson plays, then maybe stay away from him a bit. But J.D. McKissic, the running back for the Washington football team, our guy J.D. McKissic was a steal as an offseason pickup to back up Antonio Dubs Gibson, and he continues to be a good fantasy play the last few weeks since Gibson has gone down with a turf toe injury. He's averaged 14.5 half PPR points the last 3 weeks and has continued to be fed the ball in the ground game and also through the air. And it doesn't matter if Alex Smith or Dwayne Immature Haskins is the quarterback. It really doesn't matter. He keeps getting fed the ball, and this week he gets to play against the Panthers rush defense that is among the worst against running backs, especially guys that can catch it out of the backfield. So I think Gibson and McKissic is out for a very good week this week. And again, if Gibson doesn't play, McKissic's potential just goes through the roof, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would definitely partially agree. There's another caveat. Alex Smith must return. If he does not, do not start McKissic because they're only...
The thing is, though, last week he had, 10 catches? And, he was still getting fed the ball. And I don't know if Dwayne Haskins has sort of learned to check down from Alex Smith, but I don't know.
Well, it depends on, you heard about Haskins' behavior.
Yes.
A lot of James Harden. So he actually might not be able to play this week. If Alex Smith's not able to play, their only remaining option is Taylor Heineke.
True. Yeah.
Shout out DMV, shout out Virginia, ODU, but then McKissic must be avoided. Everyone on the offense for the football team is downgraded except for one player, and we'll talk about it next.
Okay. And now, moving on, can you give me 2 great fantasy plays this week?
All right, yeah, definitely. We'll build suspense for that Washington football team guy. Let's go with someone else first. Someone that may be on someone's waivers. Someone, if you played it smart, you picked him up last week. Emmanuel Sanders of the New Orleans Saints. So even from just a pure lineup perspective, he's now the undisputed number 1 on a great pass attack with Michael Thomas out for the season and Traquan Smith more than likely out for this weekend. Emmanuel Sanders is going at the Vikings defense that ranks amongst the worst in the league in terms of passing, particularly deep threats. Emmanuel Sanders still has the leg we saw last week with that big 50-yard reception against the Chiefs. Drew Brees is going to target him a lot. Kamara's value has gone up as well. Emmanuel Sanders, if you have him, start him at flex. He could be your key to a championship.
Okay. One other player.
The other player, as I mentioned, Washington football team guy, Logan Thomas, tight end for the Washington football team.
The tight end one.
In a weak position, he is a must start. He's proven week in, week out, he is a tight end 1 in fantasy, and more importantly, that he is consistent throughout the types of quarterbacks that he gets. He is a big target with excellent hands. And even if you get Tyler Heineke in there, Heineke will use him instead of McKissick as the dump down, as Heineke's limited film in college and in the NFL, but he does tend to target tight ends heavily when pressured rather than running backs. And a lot of times to protect that new quarterback, they want to put the running back in pass protection rather than the tight end. So Logan Thomas, safe floor, ceiling obviously lower if it's not Haskins or Smith, but in a position where you desperately need at least 10 points, Logan Thomas will get you close to 10 points no matter what.
Yeah, definitely agree with your picks there, especially the Logan Thomas pick. He, I talked about this on my Washington football team live streams, but early on in the season, I was very much curious as to whether Logan Thomas could become that tight end one for the Washington football team. And I think the last couple of weeks he showed that consistency, both in fantasy and in real life. So I think Logan Thomas should continue to be very good no matter the quarterback, and definitely lucky to pick him up in the offseason. But moving on to my picks for this week, my two great fantasy plays. You know what? I went with him last week, rolled with him last week. Why not do it again? And that guy is Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Eagles. He was officially named the starting quarterback for this week on Monday. So remember, Hurts is, again, the guy that I mentioned in the fantasy recap portion of this video. And I think that Hurts will only continue to produce fantastic numbers in real life and in fantasy this week, as he's playing against a Cowboys defense that, while somewhat improved from what it was in the beginning of the season, still isn't very good. It's given up a lot of points week in and week out. We saw that last week against the 49ers. So I know they ended up winning, but they did give up a lot of points to a 49ers offense that doesn't generate much points. I think Hurts is just going to be a very good option this week. He's commanding most of the work both through the air and on the ground. And when it comes to fantasy football, that's what matters, right? Getting all the targets, or getting all the carries, getting all the work through the passing game. And Hurts seems to be that type of player. So I would think he's a fantasy quarterback one this week. I really believe that. My second pick is someone who I know a lot of you guys know already, someone who Noah's actually been hyping up the last couple of weeks, and it has definitely been the right hype because he's been producing. And that guy is Brandon Ayuk, the wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. Ayuk is another guy who hasn't disappointed lucky fantasy owners the last few weeks who likely picked him up as a late waiver wire add this season. Ayuk is averaging 13 targets each week and has generated about 17.5 PPR points over the last 3 weeks as the 49ers' unquestioned number one receiver, with the loss of Deebo Samuel for the year, probably with an injury. And I know this week Ayuk doesn't get the best of matchups against the Cardinals, but Cardinals defense is still middle of the pack fantasy-wise, and Ayuk has shown even against a somewhat tough defense in Buffalo and a really tough defense in Washington, the ability to succeed as a reception machine and touchdown getter despite the poor matchups. So trot Ayuk this week out as a high-end wide receiver 2 or a low-end wide receiver 1.
Definitely agree with both picks. I think an added bonus for Jalen Hurts is that Jalen Hurts is facing Cowboys defense that's terrible against the run. So the Cowboys defense has improved a lot. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But Jalen Hurts' unique ability to run and pass means that the floor is very high. So even if they shut one aspect of the game down, one aspect of the game opens up for him. Yeah. For Ayuk, he is the perfect matchup against the Cardinals. Cardinals defense is good, but they blitz a lot. And Nick Mullen will have to throw it very quickly. Ayuk plays that slot, very similar to Deontay Johnson, honestly. Plays the slot and the mid. And like you said, they're both touchdown machines and reception machines. Ayuk's geared up for a huge week, which is interestingly enough for me. I have him in 2 leagues, but in our league, the opponent in the final has Ayuk. So I still wish him a big game, but nervous because I know he's going to break out.
Yeah. And on the flip side, as always, can you give me 2 disappointing fantasy duds this week?
Yeah, of course I can say Todd Gurley every single week because for some reason people still have faith in him. But I will go on to another quarterback instead. People that actually started him or planning to start him, I'll go Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay. So obviously this is a pick that I wanted to mention because a lot of people will start him. He's currently lined up as 60% on average, of teams are starting him in the final. And I'm not saying he's going to be terrible, because he does have a good matchup against the Broncos, but there are a couple of huge things to consider. They have the one leg of Keenan Allen right now. Keenan Allen really is trying to fight through that injury for a lost season, which I think is a horrible idea on his part. And for fantasy perspective, got shut down against a terrible Raiders defense. And Mike Williams is hurt.
Yeah.
He was on that snap count. They're playing that Julio Jones game. Very similar injury, very similar role, and I think they should play it safe because both teams are out of the playoffs. So Julio Jones, keep an eye out for him. Probably not going to play. Keenan Allen, if he does play, really going to be a shell of his former self. And this time, the Broncos actually have a really good pass corner or DB core. So not a good matchup there. Mike Williams is injured as well. No guarantee he'll play. So Herbert on paper has a decent matchup, but you're going to go, at this point, you're going against teams that has the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jackson, the Jalen Hurts, maybe Russell Wilson. I don't trust Russell Wilson that much this week, but regardless, what I'm trying to say is that all the championship teams are going to have elite quarterbacks. You need your quarterback to score at least 20 points in half PPR or 25 in PPR.
Yeah.
And Justin Herbert, I frankly, through analytics and from my own observations, doesn't look like a safe play. He looks like someone that has high potential, only getting 18, 19, which is good enough for the rest of the season, but you're a championship team for a reason. Do not trust Justin Herbert this week.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sucks because Justin Herbert, I'm like super high on him, like as a real life quarterback, and I think his potential is through the roof for the next couple of years. But yeah, it makes sense. You know, the matchup isn't great, and it is fantasy football. It's not real life football, so I trust your expertise on this, and definitely trust the machine. But do you have another fantasy dud pick that you want to go over this week?
Yeah, so it's a combo pick. The two Rams running backs, Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown.
Yeah.
So very interestingly enough, Darrell Henderson is a breakout player for us because he is getting increased role, but it's a huge role of the die. So we do have a caveat, it's a huge risk. Because Darrell Henderson, when he's been given the chance, is the more explosive of the two backs. Malcolm Brown is a little slower, more of a goal line back, but that's exactly the problem. Because Malcolm Brown has a high chance of getting the goal line touches, which is obviously more important for any of the league but PPR. So it's really tough for me to say.
Yeah.
But at this point, you are facing, again, teams that are incredibly deep. They have good players. So you don't want to play it too risky with your flex picks. And that's what I'm saying. At maximum, they're a flex pick. So Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown can be avoided. If you are actually that desperate, of the two running backs, Darrell Henderson is a better pick. But there are a lot of better options out there. Check the status of Pollard. Check the status of Jeff Wilson. Check the status of Le'Veon Bell. He's going to be starting. So there's a lot of other options. I would really try to avoid them. Darrell Henderson has a safe floor, but his floor is like 10 points. And you're going to go against a lot of teams that have their flex players that are going to get at least 15 to 20. So be very careful with that choice.
Yeah, definitely agree there. My fantasy duds, to start things off, I'm going to go with another running back, and that guy is actually Mike Davis, the running back for the Panthers. I get it.
Okay.
I get it. This analysis will be very much moot if Christian McCaffrey finds his way back into the Panthers backfield, right? Obviously, Mike Davis would be a dud because he wouldn't get much work. But even with McCaffrey being out, I just don't see Mike Davis having a great week this week. I know he's generated a lot of buzz this season with McCaffrey seemingly getting a couple of scrimmages in and dipping out with injuries and stuff this season. But yeah, just some scrimmages, some light work for him. But you see, the problem is that Mike Davis has been super inconsistent this year, and he's especially struggled against some of the toughest rush defenses in the league, even while posing somewhat of a threat as a receiver out of the backfield as well. This week, he's playing against our Washington defense that, while being very much softer against the run and through the air, has really kept starting running backs in check the last couple of weeks. And I think they won't allow Mike Davis to get solid production this week, even if McCaffrey, once again, is held out. But yeah, that's my take on Davis. My other pick is actually our guy,
Oh no.
the guy that we love, that we absolutely love, right? Washington football fans out there. Good old Kirk Cousins, the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh.
And I'll say this about good old Kirk. He does present a pretty safe floor. You mentioned that with other guys earlier in the video. But, I mean, he's averaged about 18, 19 fantasy points really the entire season. But you see, the thing is, when he plays against really tough defenses, Cousins tends to falter and have his worst performances. And this week, he's playing against the Saints defense, has given up the 4th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. And I just personally don't see this as being a great fantasy week for Cousins. Maybe he gets you 17, 18 fantasy points, but that's not what you want out of a quarterback one, out of someone you're going to start in your championship lineup this week. So that's just my take on the two guys. What are your thoughts, Noah?
I definitely agree. I'll have to also put a caveat as well. Whoever has Dalvin Cook, beware. I'm very concerned for Dalvin Cook because of the Kirk Cousins issue and because their poor secondary means this is going to be a shootout. The Vikings are playing for they're fighting for their playoff lives. If the Saints go up very early, they're going to abandon the run. I know in the past they have tried to avoid that, but they cannot afford to do that in a must-win game. So Dalvin Cook may get more involved in the pass game, but they're facing Saints rush defense that is excellent. People say, oh, they were exploited by the Eagles. But that's because they had a running quarterback and Jalen Hurts that opened lanes for Miles Sanders. Last time I checked, Kirk Cousins could not run a 40 in under 5 seconds. Yeah. So, Dalvin Cook owners, beware. If you have, I'm still start him. You can't bench him. Yeah. But in a week of championships where dreams are made and hearts are broken, I think Dalvin Cook may break your heart.
Dang. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, Kirk Cousins is kind of mobile, right? He's not, you know, one of the slowest quarterbacks in the league, but yeah, you're right. You know, rushing quarterbacks, it's a whole different animal, whole different beast. So, but yeah.
A lot of questions there in that game, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. For the Vikings, I don't know. We'll see. But finally, for the championship week for, again, most fantasy owners out there, can you give me your fantasy MVP for week 16?
I hate to mention him again. But he's gotten me this far. He's gotten tons of other people this far.
Say it.
David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears.
We are on. Yes, I said the same thing. I mean, it's just
we're on a wavelength right now. We're on a wavelength.
Yes, sir.
He has proven to be one of the best running backs in the league. I'll say that. I'll say it. He's one of the best running backs in the league. Yeah. Excellent pass catcher at 230 pounds. Excellent runner. Mitchell Trubisky has really opened up the floor for them. And best of all, they are playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. On a team much like the Vikings that are fighting for their playoff lives. Montgomery is going to get 15 to 20 carries in this game, maybe even more.
Probably more.
We saw last game, he had 32 carries. Let's put this into perspective. Derrick Henry hasn't gotten that many carries this season in a game. They are going to run David Montgomery through the roof if they have to make the playoffs. Montgomery has the safest floor. His floor is legitimately 25 points. His ceiling sounds crazy. 40 points. We have him as the #1 running back coming into this weekend through the power of analytics and artificial intelligence, along with Derrick Henry. If you have Montgomery and you were lucky enough to pick him up waivers, because a lot of people dropped him, get your parade buses out, because good feeling you're going to win this week.
How do I back that up? I gotta admit, Noah has been, well, first off, Chi-Town, stand up. Okay, stand up. I do gotta admit, though, Noah has been on Montgomery as a fantasy stud on this channel ever since the Bears bye week. He's very much been out in front of things and out in front of a lot of fantasy analysts out there who make money off of making predictions and all that. But my, oh my, you guys saw the thumbnail of our fantasy preview video last week. And I'll probably have a similar thumbnail this week. Montgomery is carrying fantasy teams to championships right now. Noah is proof of that, right? You said in two out of your 3 leagues you have Montgomery?
1 out of 3, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, And yeah, he's carrying teams to championships right now. And Montgomery, like you said, he's averaging pretty much 25 half PPR points, averaging 25 half PPR points since the bye week. And it's just been an absolute monster on the ground the last month of the season, even pushing the Bears actually in real life playoff contention, which wasn't really a thought, right, a couple of weeks back. So the string of absolutely wonderful fantasy matchups only continues for Montgomery this week. You mentioned it. He's playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense that has given up 4.5 yards per carry and has allowed 5 running backs this year to go over 100 yards this season. So like you said, start Montgomery with confidence this week. And I again, you know, I personally still am not a huge believer in Mitch Trubisky. I think he just watch, just wait. You know, Stephen A. Smith always says accident waiting to happen. I believe that with Trubisky as well. But I'll admit this, I've been a huge fan of Montgomery since he got drafted to the Bears. I've been telling Bears fans this guy is a very good talent. You know, he hasn't really shown it over the last, year and a half now, but this last month of the season has really showed it. And I've been a big fan of him in real life football, and you've been a big fan of him in fantasy football as well. So this week, we'll put it all together, have a great fantasy performance, and he will become the fantasy league winner this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But with that being said, that's going to wrap up our video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the DMVSportsZone channel, where we try to post fire content on here as much as possible. Also, our Twitter page at DMVSportsZone and our IG page, all lowercase DMVSportsZone, where we post great sports content in the DMV. We posted the Washington football and Baltimore Pro Bowl picks. We post a lot of great predictions on there, just a lot of great analysis that you guys should definitely keep up with. And any last words, Noah, about your platform, about anything really that we discussed?
No, just we're excited for the last week to help our beta testers out and to transition to the NBA season. So keep an eye out for people on the channel. We're going to be transitioning to fantasy basketball with the opening of the season tonight. Yeah, actually. So we're excited to see that data and see the power of artificial intelligence and follow through with that. And make sure to follow social media. We have a lot of big announcements. So they're coming in the next weeks for the holiday season. So keep an eye out. And Nati, if this is the last fantasy sports video, it's been an absolute honor for football. And we will be definitely keeping an eye out for next year.
For sure. Yeah. We'll see if we do put out something next week, you know, for owners out there who are in leagues that have week 17 championship. First off, what are you doing? But like, you know, there's gonna be a lot of teams that are gonna rest their starters and all that, but we understand that there are people out there who are in those leagues, so we'll see if we can put out something for you guys next week. But I mean, moving on, you know, DMV Sports Zone, SportAI, maybe we could have basketball previews, fantasy basketball previews. We'll get you guys some good content, that's for sure. But with that being said, thank you guys once again for watching. Have a very safe holidays, very nice holidays with your family. Stay safe out there. Stay blessed. And yeah, I mean, it should be another great football weekend this week. We have college football going on right now, going on throughout the weekend. We have the NFL, obviously. We got a game on Christmas Day, right? We have NBA going on Christmas. We have sports all over this weekend. So make sure you guys keep up to date with everything DMV Sports Zone, but also just have a great weekend, guys. Peace.